So yes, go ahead and start.
Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm honored to host tonight important and timely event, Abraham Accord versus Minority Alliances, presented by the Center for Middle East in collaboration with the Democracy and Federalism Hub. We are broadcast live on our YouTube channel, and we thank you all for joining from all over the world. At the heart of tonight's discussion is a crucial question for the region future. I'm sorry, Tom. I apologize, guys. There is an alarm. I'm so sorry.
Yes. Okay. So go to the shelter.
Yes.
Also going to the shelter.
Yes, and go.
Yes.
Come back to us safe. Okay. So this is a very Israeli moment.
Yes.
An alarm in the beginning of our chat. So obviously Dora won't be able to introduce us. So maybe we will introduce ourselves. Khaled, maybe you would like to begin with introducing yourself and the topic as you see it from your perspective, and then I'll follow. I'll say a few words about myself and my perspective, and we continue from there on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, no problem. So my name is Khaled Hassan. I was born in Egypt. I was born and grew up in Cairo and lived in Egypt until 2016, early 2016. I'm a national security and foreign policy researcher. So basically this is my work, but I like to focus more on geopolitics, on the impact of essentially, everyday developments to major developments on geopolitics. And recently I've been focused on the Abraham Accords, expanding the Abraham Accords, and essentially the geopolitical challenges that Israel faces. Over to you, Tom, if you want to quickly say a few words.
Great. First of all, Khaled, it's a privilege to have this discussion with you, my brother. We should do this more often, I think.
Yes.
Also from let's say from a public perspective and also from a social perspective, it's a pleasure to see you. This is I think it's a crucial time for Israel. I'll begin by introducing myself. My name is Tom Wagner. I'm the founder of the Middle East Center in Israel. We operate to gain better perspective for the Israeli crowd about the Middle East and the diverse forces that are shaping it as we speak. I will be, in this conversation, I will take the part of the advocate of the Minorities Alliance, but I think that I should emphasize that it's not a debate, it's a dialogue between two Jews with different perspective of the Middle East that are trying to figure out the best way for Israel to handle a very complex situation. And I think that I speak behalf of myself, and I think that I also speak on behalf of Khaled when I say that neither of us is like a strict advocate of a specific perception, but rather we both have our take or perspective on the situation and the right way to go on it. I think that the discussion between me and Khaled started a few hours after the Israeli strikes in Damascus. That I think that highlight this dilemma or crossroads for Israel, because what happened is that Israel attacked a so-called sovereign Muslim Arab regime, the Jalani regime, which was recognized by most of the Arab world as legitimate, on an internal Syrian affair. And I think that it caused a lot of distress in the Arab-speaking world. And I think that it's a good point for you, Khaled, to start explaining the perspective of the Arab/Sunni world when it comes to this attack and the following events. And I'll follow with my perspective.
Yes, absolutely. It's very interesting because I think I look at things from a perspective that is quite out of the box. I'm not an establishment researcher. Like I don't follow a certain line and say, we have to do this or that, because I think that this led to a lot of issues. But ironically, on that very specific point, it was probably the first time for me to really agree with the establishment view in many ways. So just to explain
The
what
Arab
happened.
establishment.
Not just the Arab, by the way, in many ways, the Israeli as well. So the
Okay.
average Israeli researcher at INSS, for example, actually agreed with my view, which I'll explain the reasoning behind. So when this happened, for me, the red line was the Israeli attack against the Ministry of Defense in Damascus and other sites in Damascus that are near the presidential palace, and also statements from Amichai Shikli when he said, we should basically eliminate Ahmad al-Shara or Gulani or whatever you want to call him. Now, the challenge here is I'm against those strikes. I'm in favor of protecting the Druze for moral reasons and also for pragmatic reasons. Pragmatic reasons in the sense that they stand between Israel and potential militias attacking Israel from Syria. So that's a very pragmatic. I want to be, very clear again. And obviously there is the moral reason that, they are a minority that could be easily outnumbered and completely destroyed. So on the other side, there are a few elements that make what Israel did awfully bad when it comes to geopolitics. So number one, Israel is against militias. Generally speaking, Israel is against militias. Israel believes in sovereignty. Israel is a country that is democratic and believes in the rule of law and does not believe that militias are okay. Israel's problem with Lebanon is Hezbollah, a militia. So Israel says, if you want us to leave Lebanon, if you want us to have no issues with Lebanon, you need to have the Lebanese army actually destroying Hezbollah and disarming Hezbollah and taking over Lebanon to be, for Lebanon to be a proper country that we can deal with. And also what's very interesting, you're going to find that the most horrific stuff that happened to Israelis happened at the hands of militias. Whether it's Hamas is not a government in the sense that, like the Egyptian government, it's not like the Jordanian government, it's not like the Saudi government, it's a militia. Hamas is a militia. It's a militia that gained governance over a piece of land, but it remains to be a militia. Hezbollah is a militia. The Houthis are a militia. So Israel's problems are mostly because of militias in the region. So for me, it was really quite hypocritical to say, no, we are against militias as a sovereign democratic state, but we support the Shia militias. That was a really challenging position. The Druze militias, sorry, my apologies, yes, the Druze militias. So that was a really challenging position because how can you support, state building in Lebanon and be against militias in Lebanon, but you're actually okay with supporting the Druze militias in Syria? That's a hypocritical position that no one was willing to accept, by the way, including the Americans. It's not just the Arabs, it's the Americans and the Arabs. So that's one point. The second point is, if we use the argument that the Druze are our brothers and sisters, and I know how Israelis feel about the Druze, if we use this argument and say the Druze are our brothers and sisters, we need to go and defend the Druze. What would we do if Egyptians said the Palestinians are our brothers and sisters? We have many Egyptians who are married to Palestinians. They are married to Gazans. There is actually families that are split between Gaza and Egypt, in Sinai. We know this for a fact. There are tribes that extend between Egypt, and Sinai and Gaza. So if the Egyptians said, hold on a moment, those are our brothers and sisters that you are killing in Gaza, we have to interfere. That would be a serious issue. So again, if you look at those two elements, number one, the hypocrisy around the militias, and then the other point is, the interference. For me, those are the main issues. But there is something else that comes up in my conversations with Saudis, including many who are actually very close to the government. If you are saying that we use, the argument that we need to defend minorities, so we need to get involved and bomb the Ministry of Defense of a sovereign state. and essentially attack the Saudi project for state building in Syria. It's a project that is supported by Saudi Arabia, by the UAE, and by the US government. So if you use this argument and say we need to protect the minorities, then the entire region, essentially, we open Pandora's box. Everyone will say, well, hold on a moment. Iran will say, you have a Shia community in Bahrain, or a Shia community in Kuwait, or a Shia community in Saudi Arabia. And those guys are persecuted. So I have the right, moral right, and legal right to interfere in your country and say, I need to defend those people. What Israel did was strategically stupid. We need to be honest, and we need to, recognize the issues we're facing. What Israel did opens a lot of. By the way, this is why also Prime Minister Netanyahu backtracked and allowed Syrian government forces to go into Suwaidat. He said initially for 48 hours, and that was because essentially everyone said to him, that is unacceptable. What you're doing is unacceptable. Not only this, you also have to recognize that from a very pragmatic point of view, Israel cannot indefinitely protect the Druze. You are talking about Sunni tribes that extend across Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and some of them are actually in Egypt as well. So if all those forces mobilize against the Druze, as they have in Syria, to a limited degree actually, you're talking about millions and millions of people who will mobilize against the Druze. Is Israel willing to send troops and have a ground incursion into Syria to protect the Druze? Is Israel willing to continue bombing places in Syria indefinitely, spending billions of dollars non-stop? Because this is, if you trigger a civil war that doesn't end, Syria has been at a civil war for 14 years. Are you willing to get involved in another civil war in Syria that can go on for an additional 14 years? So these are all the questions.
Can I interrupt you there very briefly?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, fine. So what is the world meant to do? What is Israel meant to do? Stand by while the Alawites, the Christians, and the Druze get butchered by Al Jalani's thugs and ISIS-inspired thugs? What should the world do?
This is the very interesting argument, and I get this a lot from Israelis actually, and I got some comments from some people saying, oh, you betrayed us now, Khaled, you no longer support Israel, which was quite funny. What Israel needs to do, Israel needs to function within a framework with the US. Israel has certain demands that it can raise with the US, and Israel also could have restricted its action to Suwaidat, to southern Syria, and not bomb the Ministry of Defense in Damascus. The Ministry of Defense, whenever I talk to anyone, any decision maker, anyone in Israel, in the intelligence community, in the military community, they say it was a symbolic strike to show Ahmad al-Shara that we're not going to stand by. So a symbolic strike, the cost-benefit analysis does not indicate that something that you have done as a symbolic strike, it doesn't have any gains in comparison with the costs you're paying. So you could have protected, essentially, this is what I say to Israelis, you could have protected the Druze, you could have, carried out a limited military action around al-Suwaidat, around southern Syria, not strike the Ministry of Defense, and then take it, develop a framework, which Israel did, by the way. They did this. Work with the Syrians. The Syrians met with the Israelis in Azerbaijan and other places after that. Meet with them, talk to the Americans, talk to the Saudis, and do this in a diplomatic framework, because for the Saudis and everyone else in the region, it seems like Israel is just drunk on power and is bombing Damascus for no good reason. Like, a symbolic strike is not a good enough reason. You're not acting in self-defense. You can't say this is just a symbolic strike, I'm going to bomb your Minister of Defense. That's a declaration of war.
Okay. So, Khaled, first of all, I want to say that I 100% agree with everything you said. Maybe not with the end conclusion, but everything in the process. And I would also want to add an argument from your side before I jump to my side, so-called side. But I think that your first point about militias, it's actually it can work the other way around as well, because I think that more of the issue of militias, it's actually an issue of sovereignty, and maybe the most impactful thing over here is that the Arab regimes are looking at what's going on and start asking themselves questions. What would happen if we would want to do something in our region against specific groups, or to do police work, so-called, or internal affairs, what's dubbed as internal affairs, and Israel just intervenes all of the sudden, because this definitely sets a new, it sets a new bar, and it's a precedent. And I think that maybe Egypt is more worried of the scenario that somehow Israel will start backing the Copts or have some sort of internal alliances inside Egypt than the other way around, the scenario that they will start acting to the Palestinians as family. But either way, I want to say that everything you said is 100% correct, but there's another side to this story. Because first of all, I want to say with an exclamation mark, I think Israel as a society didn't have a choice on that one. And I think that what the Arab world doesn't see, first of all, is what really started happening on the ground to the Druze community in Syria. Right. Because this massacre, so-called, well, not so-called, this massacre wasn't communicated to the Arab world as a massacre. It was communicated to the Arab world as police work against militias, collecting illegal weapons, etc. But on the ground, it was a real massacre. And the other rigid argument is that Israel, and this is an historical moment, Israel really became a Jewish Druze state. And I'm saying that I know that I'm saying something which is far out. This is a change in the history of Zionism in many ways. But we speak a lot about Sunni politics, about Arab politics. Let's speak for a minute about Druze politics, because what the Druze community in Israel done was integrating and becoming a part of the Israeli society and of the Zionist movement, which is even more far out. And first of all, the other side of the coin is that we were about to have an unprecedented crisis between Jews and Druze in Israel that was something that Israel could not take. The Druze are integrated deep inside the Israeli society in any way possible. And we started, actually, at least Jews who are connected to Druze, who speak to Druze, in those hours, we started seeing them dying from inside. Really, it was horrific. To speak to our Druze friends was horrific. They were crying, they didn't know what to do. Their brothers and sisters were being slaughtered across the border, and they were a part of Israel missions to guard guard the civilians in the northern border, in Gaza border, and they were torn inside. And we could have ended this scenario with a complete destruction of the Jewish-Druze alliance, which is something that Israel could not take. And the other point that I would...
Sorry, Tom, can I respond to this point first?
Sure.
So, you know, there is this guy, Ibrahim al-Arghani. He is the head of the Sinai tribes. His mom was born in Gaza. So I completely refuse the suggestion that we had no choice. It's not okay. I don't accept it. It doesn't hold water for me. You always have a choice. You always have a choice. And the choice, again, if you just protected the Druze of Swaidat and not hit the Minister of Defense, this would have been a completely different story. However, if you are arguing we don't have a choice, the head of the Sinai tribes in Sinai again, he's essentially a man who runs, multiple tribes, multiple families. His mom was born in Gaza. If you apply your argument to Egypt and Egypt says, sorry, we had no choice. We had the Sinai tribes and they were all saying, let's go to war in Gaza because our brothers and sisters are getting killed. If you look at Jordan, also actually Egypt, Egypt has had over 6 or 7 embassies so far. Essentially, people go and use a lock to lock people inside and say, this is because you're not acting over Gaza. Gaza's under siege, now your embassy is under siege. And then Jordan has almost 60 or 70% of Jordanians are actually Palestinian. So if they too had said, we have no choice, you will be looking at least 5 million people mobilizing against Israel. If Egypt mobilizes 2, 3, 5 million people against you at the border, you won't be able to bomb them. You won't be able to kill 5 million people. Like that's just not going to happen. So if you use the argument of no choice, Egypt can tomorrow say, no choice, sorry, I'm sending 5 million people to your border. Jordan can say, I'm really sorry, no choice. Those are our brothers and sisters. Queen Rania, the queen, she's actually got family from Judea and Samaria. Like her own ancestors come from Judea and Samaria. So you cannot make this argument. You cannot say at all, I have no choice. If you have no choice, okay, we're going to mobilize 10 million people against you. We have no choice. Sit back and watch.
Okay, great point. So Diana, I will allow you to speak, but I want to answer Khaled before.
It's just a very slow, a very short thing to compliment that hasn't been said. The Druze were actually not the aggressors here. They were being slaughtered. They were not the aggressors. It's very different from the situation in Gaza with Hamas.
Yeah, but that
hasn't been addressed. And I do feel that Israel did not have a choice because they had mounting pressure from the Druze community, which was helped us very much in the war.
Okay.
Yes, but again, are you willing to accept that the Egyptians can say we have no choice?
Yes,
because the Sinai tribes helped Egypt in its war on terror. They are part of the Egyptian community. They are Egyptian. So are you willing to accept that they can say we have no choice? If you're saying they have no choice, why can't the Egyptians say they have no choice? That's the question. Can you answer this question? If you are
because in this case Hamas is the aggressor, but the Druze were not aggressors and they're being slaughtered. It's a genocide.
Yeah, but that's what you
believe.
It's
a real genocide.
There is a completely separate narrative, a completely different narrative in Arab Sunni circles that says the Druze are actually the aggressors. They are the ones who betrayed the sovereignty of Syria and brought the Israeli army. They are traitors. They're Mossad spies. So for the overwhelming majority of the Sunni world, your narrative does not even stand. That's what you believe. What you believe is not what they believe. And this is where it becomes very interesting, because in dealing with negotiations, you have to understand that what you believe does not carry weight with the other side.
Exactly. And I think that, first of all, what we see here is a very rare occasion where we have two perspectives of the Middle East on the same media, because that rarely happens, and it's a part of the problem. But I think that it doesn't really matter for this instance who's right. Okay, it's not the question. And when I say that Israel didn't have a choice, I'm not even using arguments. To me, I'm describing a political reality. The Druze are inside the Israeli society. They're inside the parties. They're inside the Zionist parties. They're inside the Likud party. If Netanyahu or any other prime minister would let the borders be slaughtered, they have a hand on the shelter. They would shut him down, and they would shut Israel down. And it's a serious issue, and that's why I'm saying Israel didn't have a choice not to make an argument. And on real politics, what we see on the ground, that when it comes to the real deal, Israel really didn't have a choice, and that's why it acted, even that the price, I think it's very heavy, because I think that you didn't specifically said it, but I will say it. What you're saying is really, the implications are that, not what you're saying, the reality. The implications are, of course, that we cannot have, you cannot sign the Abraham Accords with Syria and Saudi Arabia in the next few months or so as planned. This is a heavy price to pay. But when it comes to real time, Israel didn't have a choice internally. She had to pay this price, and this is what she did. But on the other hand, in terms of real politics, Gaza has been reduced into rubble almost 2 years now, and the Egyptians, when in real time, they didn't came to the point where they didn't have a choice. They basically
Sorry, Tom. Can I interrupt you here on one point?
Sure.
It's not only that it's not only the Abraham Accords that's a problem, by the way. Obviously, that is a very serious price, but there is another more serious price. Israel now is seen, according to what a Saudi guy said to me, a Saudi guy who's pro-Israel, by the way, and he's very secretly pro-Israel because he's very well connected in Riyadh and he lives in Riyadh, that Israel now is seen just like Iran. You are not a reliable partner. You simply are not a reliable partner. When the king of Jordan decides to essentially live under threat, the threat that the Palestinians could at any time, the Palestinians in Jordan, many of them are armed actually, could try to carry out terrorist attacks in Jordan over the issue of Gaza and the issue of West Bank, to try to actually topple the king himself and bring his rule down. And he still manages to do the right thing and still manages to commit to a framework with the US where he doesn't act irrationally. Now, according to what I know now from within the Israeli government, the Americans were furious because Israel did not even coordinate with them when it comes to these strikes. Did not even coordinate enough with them, did not even, say, we're going to do this, what do you think? No, they just acted. So not only for the Arabs, but it's for the Arabs and also for the US, Israel is no longer seen as a reliable partner. This is seen as a turning point in Israel's position in the Middle East, where now people, including Egypt, are actually saying Israel has gone so powerful that it is mad. It is now mad on power. They will be bombing everyone and anything. They won't operate within a diplomatic framework. So this is the threat. And again, the cost is, I'm not even saying Israel should not have defended the Druze. Israel has been defending the Druze for months. If Israel defended the Druze within Suwaidah, again, and not go to hitting the Damascus Ministry of Defense and the Damascus sites, none of that would have happened. This is the red line that people saw. You're hitting the capital of a sovereign country to send a message. You don't send a message by bombs. This is how people saw it essentially.
Yeah, so first of all, I agree. I'll finish a point and then Dora will start giving the flow for questions and answers. I think that you nailed the point, okay? And the point is, to me, what is a reliable partner over here? Because I completely understand that from a Riyadh perspective and Cairo perspective, etc., this is not reliable partnership. And your point about the exaggeration of attacking the Damascus headquarters rather than just securing the Druze in southern Syria, I think is completely valid. And I don't have any argument with that, even that I should say that I don't know what was the intelligence, what was going behind the curtains, etc. But the thing is, Druze, and it's invisible from the Gulf, but it's a part of the Israeli perspective, Druze are our reliable partners. And they became our reliable partners by becoming partners, really, not from the inside, not allies, partners. Now, to the one who was looking from Riyadh and doesn't have a clue, and I'm not blaming him, I'm saying facts, doesn't have a clue about the Druze-Jewish alliance or what's going on between the extent of this alliance inside Israel, that is not only an interest one, it's an emotional one, it's a familiar one, it's really a family. It became, as I said, a Jewish-Druze entity, and we see that it's in real time that how we act.
But sorry, Tom, on this point, do you not recognize that you're putting the Druze at risk? I'm not going to go into the point of some Druze are actually against Israel's involvement in Syria because they believe it puts them at risk. But from your perspective, do you not see that the flag of Israel being raised in Swaidat and other places, that now the Druze are seen by other Syrians as not patriotic enough, that they're not Syrian enough, that they're actually traitors and Mossad spies? So what you're doing is not really doing the Druze a favor, you're also punishing them in a way. This is bad for the Druze, the Syrian Druze, who still want to be part of Syria.
Okay, so 2 points. First of all, this week I was I was coordinating a meeting between an Israeli politician and an Iraqi politician. It was, of course, it was discreet. I won't repeat the names, etc. But at some point, of course, those issues were part of the meeting. And at some point, the Israeli official told the Iraqi representative, and I support this 100%. He told them, listen, Druze are our allies. It's not a religious thing. It doesn't say in the Bible you have to be against the Sunni and for the Druze, etc. The same way the Druze became our allies, you can become our allies as well, and we will protect you in the same way. And I think that when we speak about building reliable partnerships, 100%, from the Sunni perspective, they doesn't understand this partnership between the Jewish and the Druze. They don't understand at all what was the situation on the ground from the Druze perspective. So it's misunderstood, and it's a part of the communication gap in the Middle East that it's a crucial topic. But I think to your other question, that, first of all, there's a question of if you can put someone at risk if he's already been attacked and targeted and signaled by the majority for death, basically, or for extinction. So, what can you lose if you're already sentenced to death? And the other thing, I wouldn't want to be to sound sarcastic, and I'm not cynical at all. And I should say that I'm in very deep, even anxiety from what about to happen over there to the Druze community. It's horrific. But I should say that something's got to give. The problem is the sense of enmity between the Arab world and Israel. So you say the Druze are waving the flag of Israel, and the Arab world is going lunatic because they see the Israeli flag and it's like a red flag to them. But we have to start normalizing it. This is a process that should start somehow. Now it begins now. The Druze doesn't have a choice. They're cornered. They're raising the Israeli flag. All the Islamists are going wild. But I also hear voices, mainly minorities for now, not Sunnis, Alawi, Christian, etc. I hear voices, quiet voices, because they don't want to be in trouble with the regimes. I hear voices that are saying, wait a minute, Israel is a reliable partner because they defended the Druze, even against Jelani. So this is the gap between the perspectives. If you're looking from a perspective which is a Sunni perspective that doesn't see the Jewish-Druze connection and look at Trump and the Saudis and Jolani as the potential allies of Israel over here, then it's understood why you take it as a very serious risk. But if you come closer and you look at the situation inside Israel, and you will be smart enough to deduct from it that it's possible. If what would happen if the Israeli Arabs, the Muslims inside Israel, would act the same way the Druze act, would become a part of the Israeli society, would become a part of the Zionist parties, would become...
Sorry, just to respond to this. The Bedouin community in Israel was also very much part of Israel, is very much involved in Israel's wars. You know, in the south with Egypt, the Bedouins have been fighting Israel's wars, you know, since 1948. It's, you know, they've been really involved in society. So I think that is also something else I didn't like. I didn't like how most Israeli voices did not mention the Bedouins as a reliable partner. And I think that's a challenge. I think for me, you know, it's a conversation about what strategically matters, where Israel sees itself in 10 years, in 50 years, in 5 years, you know. And I think from my view, I have heard the argument you're making. I've had other conversations. I think I'm still not convinced that the Damascus strikes were at all valid. They're not valid. I just don't see a reason. You know, it's especially from a guy who, you know, says, Ahmed Shara says, I want peace with Israel. He says, you know, I've opened my airspace for you to bomb Iran. Go ahead and do it. And then you go and bomb him. For me, this is a betrayal. And for the most people who look at this, it will be seen as a betrayal. This decision. No one says to you, come and use my airspace to bomb an enemy. And he says, we have a common enemy, which is Iran. And then you bomb him the next day and say, we're threatening to kill you. You know, Amichai Shikli, Ben Gvir saying he actually should be eliminated. That is a stab in the back. That's how a lot of people say it. And even people feel like, well, even if you say you want peace with Israel now, they can just the next day say, we're going to shoot you. You know, I think there is a serious issue. I don't want to keep talking much longer. I think a lot of people have questions, so I want to give them the chance to ask us questions.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you so much for Tom and Khaled. I want to mention two things. First of all, Druze, we have 48 and 67. 48 are part of us. 67 in Ramat HaGolan, unfortunately, most of them do not serve in the military. For the longest time, they didn't view themselves as Israeli, and most of them did not want to have an Israeli ID because they still saw themselves as part of the Druze in Syria. So this is something very important. After what happened when the war broke in Syria and the Druze felt threatened, suddenly the Druze in Ramat HaGolan they wanted to serve the military, they want to become Israeli. So there is a transition there that we need also to take in consideration. The same thing about the Bedouin. We have the Bedouin communities in the north that most of them, almost 99%, are actually serving the military, while we have the communities in the south that the very, very small percentage of them that actually join the military. So I think this is also a little bit complex things that in Israel, in our communities, like somebody that coming from outside, they don't know all those things. But we are transitioning into understanding that we need to look into this population as fully citizen. I mean, they're part of the land, they're part of the landscape. And I do agree the transition, seeing that actually might make us better to actually transition our community to become more stronger in that aspect that we're in the same situation. And regarding the attack in Damascus, we don't have all the details. They probably have a lot more details that we did not consider. So I just want to make sure to understand that when we're discussing about it, we discuss in pair what we know. And our views are not a view of somebody that know the whole entire details of the event. But I like both sides. Thank you. And I want to move to the questions. I know Yair voted, raised his hand, and then David, and then we have Diana. So Yair, go ahead, please.
Okay. So, hi, first of all, Khaled, this was an amazing interpretation. You are a really skilled debater. But I want, so first of all, so from what I understand, according to what you said, it seems like it's not a black and white issue, not involving at all, but also not bombing Damascus. So the line is like so we can say like the red line is bombing is like preventing the tribes to reach Sueda, but not bomb Damascus. Am I correct? Like this is the red line you believe in?
Yes, pretty much,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so it's a balanced position. Yeah, so I agree. So I agree. This is so I okay. So I understood. So I'm happy I understood it correctly. And have we done an unbridgeable damage, or can we fix it with the Saudis and the Syrians?
To be honest, I think it's very, very, very difficult to answer this question. I don't think we know because number one, you also have to bear in mind, like when I talk to the Saudis, it's a very difficult conversation because there is a certain framework when you talk to Saudis, when you talk to Emiratis, that you have to understand. But for the Saudis, it's a real issue because it's Mohammed bin Salman's, the crown prince, it's his project supporting Syria. So the fact that Israel got involved in a way that was damaging his project, and he's extremely popular. He's one of the most popular leaders pretty much anywhere in the world now. So is really serious for Saudis. It's really, really serious for Saudis. But there's also another issue that I think is very challenging. And I think many Israelis that I see, like influencers on social media, they don't really consider Israel's interest in the way they tweet. So you see a lot of people saying, look, let's just split up Israel. Let's have a Druze capital, a Druze country. Let's have a blah, blah, blah. Let's have a blah, blah, blah. And for most Arabs, that means Israel wants to split up Syria, to break it up into little pieces. And that feeds into a conspiracy theory that they have that Israel wants to destroy the entire Arab world, make sure no country is unified and has an army. So I really think it's done, at least in the foreseeable future, I think it's done very serious damage that will potentially take decades to actually repair, if you ask me. I don't want to exaggerate this, but it's very, very difficult to say, whether this is going to be repaired in 10, 5 years. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, thank you. We move to David. David, please, you're next.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you think al-Jilani is someone that is right to do business with? Is there anybody in the Middle East who believes al-Jilani is a legitimate leader and he can be negotiated with and compromises can be reached?
That's actually a very good question because a lot of people say, look, he was a terrorist. You don't trust terrorists. That's just who he was.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Yes, but here's the thing: if you say this, then you miss on an opportunity that could be different.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's rare. Let's say out of every 10 terrorists, 9 of them will never de-radicalize. 9 of them will never become sort of pragmatic.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe you're dealing with this one guy, 1 in 10, who's actually different. Why miss out on this opportunity? But what I always say is don't trust him. I'm not saying trust him. I'm not saying be good with him. I'm saying look at his actions, look at what he's saying, and slowly build on that stuff and test him as you go. Again, never trust him. Just continue to deal with him pragmatically.
Khaled, sorry to interrupt you. I've actually covered Syria to a certain extent as a journalist. And from what I can work out, or what I've been told, is how Giuliani goes about his ethnic cleansing is he sends out instructions to the mosques who he wants to be picked on next. Now, particularly in the west of Syria, it was the Alawites and it was the Christians. Obviously, now he sorted out them. He's now moving on to the Druze in the south. Now, it is him who is behind all this ethnic cleansing, from what I can discern, from what I've been told. I'm sorry, he's a former Al Qaeda type person. He's imported Chechens. He's got also no one can quite identify them. But he's also some other people from some of the Asian Muslim states that were former part of the Soviet Union have been imported to help out and butcher the people in the street. Estimates of 1,500 people in the west of Syria are thought to be reasonably conservative. I think it's probably a lot more than that. I had shuddering. I interviewed a Syrian Christian who lived in the West, and she saw her 3 brothers shot dead in front of her. I'm sorry, excuse my language. That is when I went from an ex-ship poster to a proper journalist. The most harrowing hour I ever spent as she went through it frame by frame. What happened on that very day. This guy is, frankly, I'm sorry for my extreme language. He's an animal. He's not fit. He's not fit to run a bath, let alone a country. It's like Hezbollah. It's like Hamas. They're not fit to run a bath, let alone a country.
Well, here's the question, David. So there are 2 questions here. Number one, so what? Like, so what in the sense of what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting that we say to this guy, leave, and then Syria goes back to a civil war, and potentially, Iran getting involved and militias getting involved? So far, this guy has agreed to a few things. One, he's agreed to kicking out the militias, the Shia militias, and that has been to a large degree successful. So this is good for Sunnis. This is good for Israel. This is good for the US. Number 2, this guy has also agreed to kicking out all those foreign Muslim fighters from the military, from security. This has not been achieved yet. It will probably take ages to achieve.
It was him. My understanding is he imported them.
Yes. He probably did. Absolutely. That's what everyone pretty much did. But the other issue is, so there is no alternative. He won. There was a civil war. He won. He's now leading. We have to work with him to at least get some of our interests achieved. But also, not only that, you have to bear in mind that there is something else that most people don't talk about. Almost everyone in Syria has blood on their hands. This includes the Druze. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're not being honest. This is a country that has been at civil war for over 14 years. Everyone has been killing everyone. I'm not saying, that obviously that the Druze are as bad as ISIS. It would be stupid to make this comparison. This is not my argument. But you have to understand. So the Alawites, for example, they're very connected to Bashar al-Assad. You have other people who are very connected.
Bashar was an Alawite, wasn't he?
Yes, exactly. He was. So you have a lot of, there are a lot of elements here where you have people who are, they still actually are loyal to the regime. They're trying to fight the current government because they're loyal to the regime. They have other sectarian issues. So it's very complicated. My suggestion is we have to be pragmatic. If we get involved and we push him out, we don't know who might be coming next.
So I want to...
Thank you. Thank you. Tom, do you want to add anything?
Yes. I want to jump on David's question because I think it's very important. The issue over here is that we have no real way of telling if this is, as most Israelis describe it, a terrorist in a suit, meaning he's disguising his true self, or this is, as Khaled implied, an extremist who is going through modernization or de-radicalization. Both phenomena would look the same to us. It's very similar to when you're driving in a dark road and you see two lights ahead of you and you have no way of telling if it's a car or two motorcycles. But we can tell for sure, first of all, that there's a difference between Jolani to ISIS because he's appointing Christians and Alawites to his government, and ISIS won't do that, and he's being attacked by ISIS. And I want to say, first of all, Khaled was 100% accurate as usually by saying that we shouldn't trust him, and it's not a reward. Having an agreement, setting boundaries, it's not a reward for being a good student or whatever, and it's not, it's about our interest, but, and it's a huge but, Jolani is more than that because he's not only a terrorist, he's an Islamic terrorist, and he's driven by Islamic concepts and narratives, and if if, it's a big if, but if he will, in the future, if he will join the Abraham Accords or sign some sort of agreement with Israel, he will have, and I think that Khaled will agree with me, he will have to reflect the moderate side of Islam, the verses in Quran that are pro-Israel or accepting Israel. I see that we have Nur Dahawi with us in the crowd. Maybe he would like to add some light on this perspective. But then he and his group, his Umayya, or whatever you want to call it, his Sunni sect, they will have to argue inside the Islamic world for their decision to normalize their ties with Israel. Their arguments, their Islamic arguments, which would be very similar to the ones that the UAE pulled out, or the ones that are being spoken in Saudi Arabia, or inside the Arab Muslim communities inside Israel, that are preaching to the moderate side of the Quran. And this will have to cause some sort of change. And just a last remark, I know that it's very confusing for most people, but it is possible through Islamic eyes and through Islamic text in the Quran, etc., to be a genocidal, terrorist, jihadist against Alawite and other sects like Yazidi and Druze who are considered by Islam as heretics, and accept Jews and Christians as what's described in the Quran, Ahl al-Kitab, which has a defense and a status, and they're not heretics and not supposed to be a target to jihad against the infidels. And if Jolani would start using these rhetorics, I think it would be worth it for Israel, whatever the price is.
Thank you, Tom. I know that Diana is next, but I want to give the opportunity to Noor Dahari because you're here and you have a lot of information. Would you like to speak? Noor, can you hear me? Unmute, yeah. Please unmute because we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hello, my friend. It's good to see you.
Hey, Tom. Thank you very much. Likewise, I'm here today to listen to Khaled, my brother, and soon I will meet him. There are a few questions which I will speak to him one-on-one. Definitely very soon, Khaled. We are trying to manage our meeting for a long time, but this time definitely. What can I say? Jelani, I mean, yes, he was, of course, he was a terrorist. He was with ISIS. He was Al-Qaeda. He has his own organization. He ran the Idlib for more than a decade, nearly. And yes, I completely disagree with him because for me, he ran the terrorist organization, but now he's a president of the Syria. So Israel has to think a little bit differently. I'm not talking about general Israeli population people. Every person has their own opinion, and obviously some consider Julani as Al Qaeda still. Some people think he's a terrorist. But the thing is this: state thinks always above the public opinion. State always thinks a national interest, which ordinary people they would not understand. And politicians, they always issue a statement which please their voters. Okay, and we do not always consider politicians' statements as a solo statement or final statement. They always keep changing. But we have to see, as expert, as analysts, we have to see what is a benefit what's the benefit. Julani's stand. Think of this: Syria for decades, since the creation of Israel, Syria has always posed a great threat to the state of Israel as well as Israelis and Jewish, of course, in the world, with the help of support of Iran and their proxies. I agree with Khaled that now his regime has been changed. like in Afghanistan, Taliban, the West doesn't have any problem with Taliban anymore. Okay, US is cooperating with Taliban in under the table, and Taliban, they did not pose any threat to the US or the Western interests. Same like if the Julani is agreed that he is not going to pose any threat towards Israel or Israelis' interests, halas, falah, no problem. That's fine. Problem in Druze, obviously Israel went further, crossed the red line and went further to help Druze, which needs to be helped. Israel cannot leave Druze completely in the situation of the danger. But obviously, Khalid, I agree with Khalid, bombing Damascus, it was a little bit cross the red line. Because Julani, he is willing to shake hands with Israel. And he issued a few statements, and he's willing to cooperate with Israel on certain conditions. And this is why the Mohammed bin Salman, he's a great leader in the Middle East, and one of the great leaders in the world, what I say now. And we need such leaders in the Middle East. Obviously, his interests are in danger if not even the KSAs, but as well as the US interests are in danger if Israel cross a red line and bomb directly in Damascus. Islam, according to his ideology, is Islamist. We shouldn't care about that. You know why? Because he is now the head of the state. He thinks beyond his own personal Islamic ideology. If you look at his past, he is a very authoritarian person. He never be strict with, like he has conflict with Abu Bakr Baghdadi over the power, because Abu Bakr Baghdadi wanted him to run his affairs under him. He said, no, I have my own credibility. I have my own people. I cannot run my affairs in Syria under you because you are in Iraq, I'm in Syria. I run the show, not you. Then he has a conflict with Jabhat al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda. Because this person is a completely different. You need to see his profiling, not as a journal like, oh, he is attached with Al-Qaeda, he was attached with ISIS, he was attached with, with collaboration with somehow other terrorist organizations. No, Israeli intel specialists, they see profiling. His profiling is a completely different than the normal head of the terrorist. He's very dictator type, like a normal Arab mentality, nationalist mentality, like a Saddam Hussein, like Gaddafi. Do you understand? He is such type person. He wants people accept his authority, and he is willing to give everything. If Israel accepts his authority as per their national interest, he is willing to give as much as benefit to Israel as possible. Like Khalid said, airspace, opening airspace, first time on the Syria is a big thing. It's a big thing. Do you understand? At very starting level, and still states, majority of states in the world have not recognized Giuliani's government as a sovereign state. And he opened the state, he opened the air fly zone to Israel to bomb Iran. I think Israel need this asset. Do not rush into like a domestic emotional, like a Druze are in danger. Obviously, go in there and help the Druze, and Israelis are helping Druze not now, for both the time of the Bashar Assad. It's not a new thing. Do you understand? Yes, you can go, but you do not cross the red line. Simple as that. Because you don't want to lose asset. Because a big problem because when I was in Syria's border, and we have been briefed by the Intel, IDF and UN, and I'll not go for the deep Intel briefing, but the one thing is, let me tell you, Israel in Syria, Giuliani is not a threat to Israel, very much. Okay, these fighters sometimes, because in Giuliani there are some fighters are completely disagree and they do not associate with Giuliani because of Israel, his stand with Israel. I don't want to take further time because this is a show for Khaled, and I'm here to learn and listen to Khaled. But let me tell you one thing: the big threat for Israel in Syria is not Julani, it's Turkey. It's Turkey. Turkey want to be another Iran in there against Israel. So Julani, so you need a Julani against Turkish. So rest of Khaled, you can brief us. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Noor. It's amazing. We move to Diana. Thank you so much for waiting. Please go ahead. Yeah. Diana, can you unmute? Yeah.
Oh, good.
Oops, I lowered
Before you
my
do
hand
that,
and I didn't unmute. Sorry. Noor, it's such a privilege to be on a chat with you and to hear your insight. It really is so special. And Khaled, thank you so much for being with us. Yes, well, many of the points that I was going to make, Noor made, but my question really is, I don't know if you guys remember before when the war started with Hamas, there used to be this theory that now Israel is showing its weak side, and therefore the moderate Arabs are not going to want to make a peace to come into the Abraham Accords, Saudi Arabia, because they're not going to want a weak partner. So that Israel had to show that they're strong in order for Saudi Arabia to want to be a partner in the Abraham Accords. So here we see that we're walking a tightrope, because on the one hand, we want to show that we're strong. On the other hand, we can't cross a red line. So maybe Khaled, I hear what you're saying, and you believe, and I agree with you that there was a red line that was crossed. I don't agree that I absolutely think that we had to help the Druze. But on the other hand, if you think about it, the fact that we went ahead and we attacked their military compound in Syria, that shows that Israel is strong, and maybe that shows the moderate Arabs that Israel is a partner that is worth making peace with. What do you think about that?
Sorry, Noor, it was really lovely listening to you, and thanks for speaking, Akhi. I'm hoping we'll meet soon. I completely disagree, Diana, because I think this is where, I think, to be honest, as much as the Arab, in Riyadh does not understand the Israeli culture, I also think that the Israelis do not understand Arab culture. It's a serious issue. When you can send messages in different ways. So yesterday, a Saudi guy said something that I really liked. He said Saudi Arabia follows this approach where they like, essentially they apply an approach where they have powerful politics, not the politics of power. There is a huge difference. Powerful politics means you have a country like Saudi Arabia that now has huge investments. It has the third largest sovereign wealth fund globally. It has a lot of influence over President Trump. So this is powerful politics. Saudi Arabia does not appreciate disrespect and the politics of power. What Israel did by crossing this red line is the politics of power. I'm going to bomb you. I'm going to teach you a lesson. And for them, the Arab will never accept humiliation. You have to understand this. This is something that most people do not understand. So if you see here in the UK, if a man sees that there is a man who's, stronger than him, he might run. He might sort of, be like, okay, I'll run today to fight another day. That doesn't happen in Egypt. It doesn't happen in Riyadh. If a man is fighting with another man who's stronger than him, I am willing to die to prove that I did not run as a coward. This is what people don't understand. By triggering this sort of shame and honor thing, by disrespecting Saudi Arabia, you actually unleashed something really nasty. This is what's happening. So number one, you had the American ambassador essentially becoming critical of Israel within like 24 hours. You had a lot of criticism from Israeli officials. And from American officials saying we want to maintain Syria as a sovereign country, no militias, no involvement from outside powers. So you really unleashed something that was, no, this is not admiration. They're not going to admire this. they're going to feel, one, threatened by this, and cornered in a position where they have to confront you. Just one last comment on what Tom said about, Islam and Islam, being sort of, this faith where you can actually use to say, relations with Jews are perfectly fine, or relations with Jews are non-Muslims are not fine. And I think I'm reminded of something that a friend of mine said. Every problem in halakha has a solution in halakha. Like it's, that's pretty much the same for Islam. Every problem in Sharia has a solution in Sharia. So I can say to you, don't deal with the Jew because of XYZ. And I can say to you, actually, you can deal with the Jew because the Prophet Muhammad had business dealings with Jews, blah, 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 blah. So it's the same concept. It applies to Judaism and Islam, by the way. And I think that's the beauty of how, just the similarity of both religions in a way.
Yeah, thank you. We move to Rafi. Rafi, go ahead.
Thanks, Dora. Hi, guys. My name is Rafi. I'm Israeli Jewish, live in Jerusalem. I advocate for federalism between Israelis and Palestinians. Well, I agree with both speakers that the Israeli Druze partnership is very important, obviously, to Israel for a very long time, and that's obviously needed to be maintained and going to be. And cultivating a partnership with the wider Sunni Arab world, the Arab world is also incredibly important. I think the most important ally for the state of Israel to develop is with the Palestinians. Start with closest to home and then branch out. And so I don't really generally like the policy of the current Israeli government vis-a-vis the Palestinians in general over the last 16 years, and not necessarily the handling of the war in Gaza. Regarding what just happened in Syria, I've been actually very hopeful that Israel would be able to make peace with Syria. It's sort of a dream, if you have peace with Syria, I could get in my car from Jerusalem and drive, to Turkey through Syria, and then I could go to Europe and I could take road trips and see the world. I stopped being trapped. So it's peace with Syria is a dream come true. But at the same time, when I saw the videos of people like being thrown off buildings and stuff in Syria, all of a sudden, my heart was breaking. Like, what the? I thought, I was hoping Jolani was going to be the guy, and all of a sudden, I'm like, I can't trust him anymore. And given the emotional state Israelis are in with having missiles only like a month ago from Iran running like several times a day to bomb shelters and stuff exploding all over, you have to understand the position Israelis, the emotional state that we're in, that we feel like we're in a 7-front war, and then something else sparked off and Israelis are ready to bomb something. So it's like, at the moment, I was like, I don't care if they're bombing Syria. We've been bombing Iran. We've bombed anybody. Like, we're at the maximum amount of stress right now. Anybody starts anything and things are going to fly. So it's we definitely need to try to calm down the situation. And the question is, I think, well, I want to say that within Israel, I definitely don't think Israelis want to break up the whole Arab world. I think that's an exaggeration. There's definitely a school of thought that thinks in the countries to the north, like Syria and Iraq and maybe in Lebanon, there's a lot. It's a very multi-ethnic region, and it's not really functioning as all these big countries, and they're a pro-Balkanization, school of thought within Israel. Like, it'll be more stable if Iraq breaks up into 3 countries and Syria breaks up into 3 or 4 countries, and there's all these small ethnic countries instead of these big dictatorships that have multi-ethnic minorities that are being picked on. I'm not in favor of Balkanization. I'd like the states to hold on to it. I think Israel-Palestine partnering is sort of send a message that, yeah, we can have a multi-ethnic Middle East and people can get along with their neighbors, and that's the future I'd like to promote. So what can Jolani do to convince Israelis that Syria can actually be a functioning country? I don't think we want to have just a Syria that doesn't threaten us, because we're not really afraid of Syria. I mean, realistically, we're the strongest player, at least we feel, at the moment. But we definitely would like to be friends with Syria, but we'd want Syria to be like a reasonably moral country. We don't have a huge highly standards, but you can't be throwing people off buildings. So what can Jolani do or Syrian government do to build trust that they're sort of a normative country that we can be partners with, and they're not going to make us look like we're partnering with, jihadi lunatics. We want to have partners that look like moderate, civilized countries. So what would the speakers, how would they say, what could they do? Not just what could Israel do to prove to them?
Yeah, it's very interesting, actually, because I think he did pretty much everything he could possibly do. I'm not going to lie to you. So, number one, he committed to allowing Israel to carry out airstrikes from, using Syrian airspace against Iran. Interestingly, and this is not something that a lot of people know, friends of mine, Israeli Jews, were actually visiting in Damascus around that same time, staying there for a week, working with the Syrian government, meeting Syrian officials. Syrian Jews were allowed to visit, and he arranged for them to visit their places, their homes, their cemeteries. So I honestly don't think he could have done anything else. This is the tragedy of it. I don't think he could have done anything else. You have Egypt, which is, threatening to go to war, which has been really hostile, which has been, they haven't accepted the Israeli ambassador in Cairo since at least, a few months now. Actually, quite a few months. So you have other players in the region who are being hostile, who are being openly hostile, and you have this guy who's saying, you know what, let's be friends. And he's also given, some of the belongings of the Israeli spy in Damascus, who's killed by, Hafez al-Assad's regime. So he's really done, by the way, everything that he's done publicly on that stuff and giving the belongings of an Israeli spy and all that stuff means that he gets accusations from pretty much everyone in the region of being a Mossad spy. So this guy is taking a lot of risks to build a relationship with Israel. And then we have Israeli ministers saying, we're going to kill him. We should kill him. I mean, you can't see how bad this situation is when you look at this. It's utterly, just unimaginably stupid. That's how I see it. But it's also, it's very challenging. I think one last point that Dora mentioned, which is, we don't know, we don't have all the intelligence. I don't think that's also a valid argument. If you strike outside your country's borders, you have to explain to the international community why you're doing it. So it doesn't stand. We can't say we just bombed it and it's a secret. We're not going to explain to you because we have intelligence that we don't want to explain. It's not an internal affair that people can be like, okay, it's none of my business. No, it is my business because you attacked another sovereign country. So I think he's done everything that he can possibly do. It's very difficult being in his position, a country that's been at war for 14 years. He's not going to get rid of all of the terrorists in, a few months. You have to give him time, and you have to be realistic, and you have to be helpful as well. That's something else that has to be done. No one on earth can actually, it's very interesting because Israel says for domestic reasons, we would have had serious issues with the Druze if we didn't protect the Syrian Druze. Well, imagine being this guy. You run a country that has been at war for 14 years. Everyone has been killing everyone. So it's really tough. It's domestically very, very tough for him.
But if we would see him prosecuting people for doing massacres of the Druze and make it look like this is not, he's not associating with it, I feel like that would build the that's at least on the Israeli side. The case against Jolani is that he's abusing minorities within his country. We appreciate that he's trying to be nice to us. We do get that messaging. So that's good. That's a good step. But we don't want him to be nice to us while killing the Alawites and killing the Druze. Then, he's not really necessarily a good actor. He's just sucking up to us because we're powerful.
Yeah, but what will he also do if he gets the Druze inside that saying we're going to declare independence? We're going to have a state of our own. No one would accept that. If this happened in Egypt, if this happened in Morocco, if this happened in Saudi Arabia, you would have the army getting involved and actually forcing those people, into accepting the government. So he's in a really difficult position. And I think some people in the Druze community are actually very inflammatory. I was talking to a Druze lady. She came on my Twitter space on, the very next day this happened. And she said, well, yes, we're never going to accept him as our president. We want to be an independent country. Well, you can't. No one's going to be okay with this. Saudi Arabia is not going to be okay with this. Turkey is not going to be okay with this because they know that the Kurds now will say we want to be an independent country and break up Turkey. The US is not going to be okay with this. The UAE is not going to be okay with this. Egypt is not going to be okay with this. So you can't declare your own country because you're going to have to go to war. This man will kill you if you decide we're going to declare our own independent Druze country. And everyone will support him across the region.
So,
Okay, good point. You're wrapping.
May I say something as well?
Sorry?
May I say something? Yes, I also want to say
Please,
something.
go ahead. Yeah,
Okay.
please. Of course.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all,
Hi.
Khaled, I want to say that you spoke tonight what I've been telling since Giuliani came to power, literally word by word and thought by thought for the past 1+ hour. And I want to thank you for that because I think it's very important what you're doing. Like coming from your side, because when I say it, people say like, I don't know, that I don't know what I'm talking about. But when it comes from someone like you, maybe it's received differently, I think. And I think you pointed out every single aspect from like when Giuliani came to power and everything he did. And as you said, actions speak. And I think all his actions so far, in my opinion, okay, I don't think he's responsible for the massacre against the Druze. Somehow everything is pinpointed on him. Everything that goes wrong in Syria is Giuliani's fault. I don't know how people got to that conclusion. He literally didn't say that. He issued decrees in which he blamed the attacks. He's doing his best. And as you said, he needs help and he's not getting it. He asked for help. He asked for help from Europe, from the US, and nobody's helping. Israel is blaming him. So, yeah, and I agree with you that how Israel acted and like during the massacre, striking Damascus Ministry of Defense was a mistake. What would have been better is to support the Druze in other ways, like we did before and we did after the massacre, and not bomb official buildings. Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for all your talk tonight. It was really eye-opening, I hope, for some people here.
Yeah, thank you, Selena. Khaled, do you want to put another remark?
Yes, I think just one last remark for me on this. Since this happened, I have been feeling this. I mean, I actually there were a couple of days when I couldn't sleep because I really was fearing for Israel's future, because I think what most people do not understand, Israel has an air force that is superior. Yes, but you cannot bomb millions of people. That's the challenge. Like, for me, imagine if on October 7th, Egypt also mobilized. Imagine if Hezbollah also mobilized. Imagine if Jordan also mobilized. You cannot bomb, millions of people. It's just not going to be a sustainable position. And since this stuff happened, it has been going downhill for Israel. Before that stuff happened, I was saying Israel is winning. Yes, there are serious losses when it comes to PR, when it comes to Israel's standing, the arrest warrants and all that stuff. And we're fighting that stuff. And I thought we were winning, regardless of what was happening, we were winning. But since that stuff happened on, the Damascus strike and all that, Israel has been really going downhill in my view, and in my view, losing. That's the challenge. Israel has been losing, and now we have seen the whole Palestine recognition, unilateral from France, unilateral now from the UK, and it's not going to be just the UK. It's going to, we're talking about France, UK, Canada will follow, Australia will probably follow. We're going to be in a very, very difficult position where even our allies are also put in a very difficult position. So the UAE will be put in a very difficult position. The US, if the US is the only country on the planet that does not recognize an independent Palestine, this is, we're going to be dealing with something here that's going to be really quite unheard of. This is territory we have not seen before. And I'm not sure, like when I talk to any decision makers, I don't really see this sort of serious, fear of where we are. Maybe they have a plan, maybe they have, they know something I don't. But I think this is a point, in my view, where we really need something. I don't know what we can do now, but something needs to change. In my view, we need an exit strategy across everywhere, all fronts. We need to know when we end this, how do we get out of that situation, basically.
Yeah, thank you. I know Adassa. Adassa, you still with us? Would you like to speak? Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure, thank you. So I wanted to ask, like Israel is acting in a certain way for many, many years. And I think Khaled said that now it's going to take decades to change what's happened in Syria about the way we act to the Druze. And I was wondering, like, I don't know, there are many Saudi Arabia politics that said horrible things about Israel, but we understand that NBS is the one that running the strategy there, and we will listen to what's going on in the field and what he said. and we don't pay attention to what any politics, like not central politics, said there. So why one action of Israel, like changing everything that all the Arab world think of her, and every stupid thing that like some minor politics in Israel matter so much. Like, can't the Arab world, especially Saudi Arabia, look at Israel the way we look at them? Like, we know they have like strategy, and we don't pay attention to every act and every word that someone said. That it's not like go with this strategy, and especially about what Israel did about in Syria. Like, we understand it's a mistake, but why is it matter so much?
I think that's a very good question, actually. And I was talking to a Saudi guy, and he actually said that the Prime Minister Bibi, he said he used, different swearing words to describe him. And the Saudis are very particular. So the Saudis would say, never offend my country, never offend my religion, never offend my leadership. And this guy knows who I am, So I said to him, hold on a moment. You say never offend my leadership, but you're now offending the leader of the Jewish people. Why do you think you can get away with this? There is definitely a double standard. And this double standard is for, in my view, 3 reasons. And it's actually very reflective of how Arab societies work. So if a poor man in an Arab society steals, he's going to be punished because he's a poor man. If a powerful man steals, there are going to be ways to work around it because he's a powerful man, he's got dignity, he's got, excuses will be made for him, justifications, all that stuff. So Israel in this position is a minority, so it's a small country, so it will be treated like this, look, you're weak, you cannot get away with this. You're not going to get away with the stuff that other countries get away with. Now, the other side is, which is, a complete contradiction, it's also because Israel is the most powerful army in the region. Because Israel is the most powerful army in the region, it means it's a minority. It's it's this poor guy who's quite sort of small and tiny, but he's also got the most powerful gun in the region. So so that means it will be seen as you're a threat. You're a threat to all of us. Now the third issue is anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories. What we have been trying to do, what we've been trying to build for months and months and months, at least me through my work, is talk to Saudis and say, look, Israel has no intentions to do you harm. Israel has never threatened Saudi Arabia. Israel has never threatened anyone in the Gulf, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE. They've just never threatened you. Why do you say Israel is an enemy? Now, they do believe that Israel is an enemy because of a lot of conspiracy theories and all that stuff. But when Israel attacks this guy, who's essentially he's Mohammed bin Salman's man in Damascus, then now you're attacking Saudi interests. So the conspiracy theories are all triggered now that actually, you know what, you are an enemy, like we thought you were. So it's those 3 reasons that make Israel's position especially complex and especially challenging. I'm not really sure, if I was advising Prime Minister Netanyahu, I would say, so many things need to change. The messaging to the Arab world, and there are a few commentators, a few people who tweet, like Eddie Cohen. Eddie Cohen is a complete disaster. He's a complete disaster. He's completely out of hand. He does stuff sometimes that they use, and they say he's a Mossad agent. Well, they say he's a Mossad officer, which, leads to a lot of issues because the statements that he puts out are very provocative, like, yes, we want to break up Syria. When you say that stuff, when you say, yes, we want to break up Syria, you're talking, as an individual, but they see it as that's the Israeli official position.
Thank you. I know Tom would like to add anything.
Yes. So first of all, I think that when we speak about Jolani, or whether he made a mistake or whether he made what he could have done, so first of all, I agree with Khaled that it seems that he's done everything that he could to create better atmosphere and to build trust, but he also made a mistake. And I'm not saying it's an intentional mistake, but what happened inside of Syria is that the situation on the ground is that basically, as Khaled pointed out, everybody have weapons. Okay, it's a violent place. It's a place of militias with, I think, there are more people with guns than people with cars, probably. Every group is a militia. And Giuliani started to creating sovereignty, which is a step in the right direction, but he started creating sovereignty from the minorities while he doesn't have full control on his own people. So what happened on the ground is that, first of all, the Syrian regime said, we want to collect illegal weapons from the Alawite community, and so they did. And once once they got the Alawite weapons, then Sunni militias, jihadist militias, who are not necessarily responding to Giuliani himself, but they went in and massacred the Alawites. Now, when the regime forces were targeting the Druze in Syria, actually a very interesting story that I heard is that they notified the Americans before it. They told the Americans, we're going to conduct some sort of police operation to gather illegal weapons in the Sueda or something like that. I'm not entirely sure that the Americans understood what is Sueda, what are Druze. Maybe they thought it was a name of food. It's possible. Part of the problem is that the diplomats and the people in charge don't know the region itself. And this is a huge gap that makes us make mistakes. But it also makes Giuliani make mistakes, because once he started working in this pattern, the Druze, they weren't able to surrender their weapons because they saw what happened to the Alawites. And indeed, once the militias came to collect the illegal weapons, some of the militias also massacred some of the Druze. So obviously they couldn't give up. And I think, actually, when I thought about it, I said to myself, if it was Nasrallah, he wouldn't do it, because Nasrallah was experienced enough and understood enough the other side, which is the Israeli side in this matter, to know the alliance between Israel and the Druze and to conclude that something is bound to happen. But I also think that Giuliani didn't have much of maneuvering place. The minorities, they rightly point out to the fact that he could have started collecting illegal weapons from the Sunni militias who are not under threat. But he couldn't do it from reasons of internal politics, in the same way that Israel couldn't sit back and watch the Druze being slaughtered in Syria for reasons of internal politics. But what we have here is two systems of internal politics that doesn't understand each other, and it's creating horrific mistakes.
Yeah, thank you. I know you want to make a comment. Noor, do you want to make a comment as well?
Yes, thank you very much. I will just few words about the current situation in Sueda. I never involved myself in the Druze and Syria situation. If you look at my social media, I didn't post anything about Druze, okay? Because the answer to the Rafi, yes, they have been massacred, but you need to see a very broader, the Israelis need to see a very broader picture in Syria. If you think that removing Iranian proxies, like Iranian influence in government, from the remove the Iranian government, Assad's government, and you think there's Iran is gone, Iran can't go. Remember that. Iran was there for last 50 years, more than 50 years. Iran still is there. Iranian money, Iranian sources, Iranian network, Iranian intel, Iranian collaborators are still there in Damascus, everywhere. This massacre, this issue that happened in Sueda, Iran is directly behind it, because Iran will try its best not to join Al-Shura into Ibrahim Accords. And Iran will do its best to create a mess inside Syria so that Israel can emotionally enter in Syria and like bomb Damascus and this and that. There are reports, I will not mention the name. Yes, there is a one or two Druze leader, they got Iranian support in Soeda to create this mess. I will privately, I will tell Khaled or I will tell Tom with evidence, yes, there is an Iranian network in Soeda within Druze leadership, and they have created this mess. I'm not saying that they are the troublemaker. No, I'm saying the mess was created and they escalated the situation. Okay, because Iran is still there in Syria, and Israelis, they know it. But because Druze breached the border, they entered in Syria, Israeli Druze entered into Syria to support Syrian Druze. So Israel didn't have another choice except military actions, because if Druze has been kidnapped by Sunni and Shia militia, it could have been a big problem against like hostages in Gaza. So Israel has to apply a military actions. But obviously we know it's across the red line, okay? But remember that there's an Iranian mess is there, okay? So you have to see a very broader picture, not like just, tunnel vision. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Noor. I remember that there is a division within the Druze in Syria. And let's go to Yair, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was wondering, like many that even some let's say junior Israeli politicians spoke about the Balkanization or the breaking up of countries, and the source of all these theories, I think, is from the Middle Eastern studies, like it's that the whole Arab countries are artificial and that they will fall apart eventually. And I think they downplay the amount of the dominance of Sunni Arabs in those countries. And maybe the whole Sykes-Picot thesis is exaggerated and it's overrated. Like, the countries did not fall apart. The only country that is now falling apart, I think, is Yemen. And Yemen is not an invention of Sykes-Picot. Yemen, in fact, was a union of South Yemen and North Yemen, which were divided by Arabs, not by the Europeans. So maybe we need to stop this thesis that everything is artificial and that these countries are going to fall apart, because I think it's a damaging thesis. By the way, people spoke here of federalism. I'm also in the federalist movement, though I'm open to various directions. But the thing is, maybe indeed the discussions about minorities in the Middle East should deal more with national autonomies rather than Balkanization. Yeah, I would like to hear your responses for that.
Yeah. Khaled, please.
Yes, I think it's regardless of, that conversation essentially should not be initiated by Israel. It's none of Israel's business. We need to be very clear. You're not dealing with. This is also another aspect that I think most people do not understand. When someone says something in Israeli media, and that's a problem that Israel will not be able to solve, it's understood that this is the Israeli position. Because in the Arab world, you don't really have independent media. You don't really have media that is completely separate from the government. You just don't. So if some random guy goes on TV and says, oh, look, Israel wants to, or if he says, oh, I believe we should split up Syria, that's going to be seen as the official Israeli government because they at least let him say it. But I don't think Israel should get involved in this at all. In my view, if you understand the Middle East, you should understand its people. And I think, Israelis should do, I think, a bit more to understand, the people around them. So for example, an Israeli said on one of my comments that Mohammed bin Salman is a coward and he's useless and all that stuff, and that is not how you approach Saudis at all. This was really serious for Saudis. So, there are things that Israelis need to understand to be able to truly make the most of the opportunities that present themselves. So for me, it's just not a conversation I'm willing to have in sense of, what should Syria do? Let the Syrian people decide. None of my business. As long as they don't harm Israel, they don't harm Jews, I don't care. This is my view, to be honest. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And we go to Rafi, and then we're going to wrap it up, okay, because we're over time. So go ahead, Rafi.
Okay, yeah, I completely agree. I'm in the middle of writing an article basically about the theory of how I see a lot of thinkers on the Israeli side saying Arabs in general are very tribal and they're very religious. And I meet Palestinians and Arabs in general my age, and I'm like, no, they're religiously pretty moderate to secular, and they're all very nationalist. You're imagining Arabs as they were 100 years ago and trying to superimpose on the modern situation. That's not at all what I notice. And I agree. That's where this idea that it's all this fake identity. That's how most countries in the world are less than 200 years old. I mean, that's the reality. We had all these empires that fell apart and countries formed, but they were forming based on going back to ethnic nationalisms that existed. They had languages and cultures, and that's how countries forms. And you don't always have clean boundaries where you can separate, viable countries for each, ethnic group. There's 500 ethnic groups in 200 countries in the world. So the Middle East has to deal with the reality of we need viable states. You're going to have some of them are going to be multi-ethnic. So, and I agree, federalism is a good model. At least I try to promote it here in Israel. Palestine is a good place to start, and if Syria is more than welcome to, take some of that same line of thinking and develop their own federalist movement, and we can, share ideas across borders, that's fine. But obviously, we're not going to force them to make a federalist country. That's their, their democratic prerogative, what they do. But I'm fine with recommending that.
Yeah. Thank you, Rafi. Yeah, and actually, the voices of federalism coming from the women's side in Syria, just as looking for different women programs that they are looking for solutions. So federalism is a path that Syria should consider, but this is for them, for their decision.
Can I say something? Sorry, regarding federalism, I don't know if you saw the news today, after the leader of the SDF, of the Kurdish group, said yesterday that they will never join Julani's government, then it was something between Tom Barak, the US envoy to Syria, a meeting with a Turkish entity, I forgot now which one was exactly, in which it was said that they discussed that if SDF doesn't join the Syrian government, basically the US is going to take their hands off the Druze, of the Kurds. And today, all of a sudden, the Kurds announced that they're going to join with their 100,000 forces, they're going to join the Syrian government, all of a sudden. I don't know if you're aware of that. So yeah, that's a big move. It's basically what happened in Turkey with the Kurds. They're gonna not really lay down their weapons, but take their weapons and join the Syrian military.
Yeah, but I know there is discussion for autonomy, some type of autonomy, and that's a step toward federalism. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically they're saying that they're gonna join the government and they're gonna be their forces are gonna be part of the government forces. I think the autonomy goes away. No, that's how I see it. From what they said today, the autonomy is off the table, basically.
But they have, beside the military, they have their own system, right? For education, for health.
That's something else, but they said that they're going to join militarily, they're going to join Syria. That's today, it's in the news. It's I don't know, a few hours ago, 6-7 hours ago, something like this, more or less.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's a difference between what it is said publicly and what will be implemented de facto.
No, I think because the US kind of pushed them into it, and they tried to do it before a few months ago, and they saw it's not moving, so now I think they did it it's either this or that. So they didn't have a choice. That's how I see it, because it was literally overnight. From yesterday to today, they changed their stance completely, and it's happening. It happened already in Turkey, it's happening in Iraq, and now in Syria. So I don't know, I think it's a general path to which Kurds are kind of forced or not to integrate into their countries, the countries where they are at the moment. That's how I see it. And yeah, so
well, Turkey want to eliminate Kurdish, and Kurdish have only the choice to join the Julani Otherwise, Turkey will wipe them up completely.
I
I'm
agree.
telling you.
I agree. I think it's the same.
That's their national interest. They have to join Giuliani, or they have to be gone from the Syria forever. Because
I don't
Turkey
think
is
they see it in their interest at the moment, but I think also that it's in their interest on the long term. I agree.
Turkey is a training jihadists inside Syria against Kurdish for a long time.
And
So
against the Druze.
that's
And
something.
against the Druze. A big part of
Well,
the jihadists that
that's what I
massacre
say,
the Druze
but
right now are
that's what I'm
actually
saying.
Turkish-trained mercenaries.
That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. The big problem is Turkey.
Yeah.
Turkey inside Syria.
I agree.
Yeah,
I think our next talk should be probably on Turkey, actually, because Turkey has also been selling drones to Egypt.
Yeah.
They're also getting involved in air defense systems. You know, Turkey is now, they also use their position as NATO members for others to get around, avoiding like buying from Russia or buying from China would put you, in trouble with the Americans. So instead of doing that, you go and you buy from the Turks who are Muslim, who have their own, sort of regional empire and aspirations. So I think, yeah, that would be a very interesting discussion for next time.
Because Turkey is like another Iran, but the only problem Turkey has a leverage, Turkey is a NATO member. So no any country in the world can attack Turkey. Attack Turkey, it will be considered attack NATO, and NATO has to support Turkey against such country. But everyone knows is Hamas is like Iran, Turkey, and Turkey has a big influence in Iraq, especially in Syria, and a big threat to Israel. Honestly, we should talk on this topic. It's a very lengthy, very, very good topic that you need to be talk on this next time. Tom, remember this, my friend.
Definitely.
Tom, please go ahead and finish.
So I think that it was a very important discussion, and as I said, it rarely happens when we have an open discussion that brings together Jewish Israeli perspectives together with perspectives with the Arab world in a calm and factual matter. We should do a lot more than that. I want to state something that to me is a bit funny. For many years, the Arab world, or let's say thought leaders in the Arab world, were very critical of the Sykes-Picot Agreement because it created artificial borders that doesn't compute the ethnic minorities and division between tribes, etc., etc. Now, what we're seeing here is basically a process which is counter Sykes-Picot. You can say balkanization, you can say separation, but it's also creating, if the flow continues, creating a Druze entity, a Kurdish entity, something that is probably seems more correct than the Sykes-Picot Agreement that was just drawn on a map. But what we see is that basically nationality is, as people would say, it's an invention, but inventions are real. Inventions are not fake. So the new nationalism of the Syrian nationality or Egyptian nationality, etc., were created from the background of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, but it turned real, and now people are saying, no, we don't want to be divided because this is our identity now, the Syrian identity. But we should also point out, Khaled, and I think this can close the circle about our discussion between perspectives, that from Israeli, at least I would say from an Israeli right-wing perspective, the Arab and the Western world are trying to do to Israel exactly what they're complaining about. They're trying to create from the Holy Land or the state of Israel, or the complete state of Israel, if you may, they're trying to create a two-state solution because there are two demographies in this region and it makes sense. But it also makes sense that if the Druze want independence, that they're also entitled to it if we consider that the Palestinians are entitled for it. And in the same way that you, Khaled, replied practically to the Druze argument of wanting sovereignty or independence, you can't, okay, because of practical geopolitical reasons. The same way Israel could say to the Palestinians, okay, but you can't, because, or to the Arab world, okay, but you can't have a Palestinian state because we also have valid reasons. So what we see here is, again, is I think maybe not even hypocrisy. It first of all, it's complete lack of understanding and even the knowledge of each other's perspectives. It's a good mission to start with.
I agree. Thanks, everyone. It was really a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.